All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Greg, to the GFS events team for hosting, to all the other presenters who have shared their success stories. It's always great hearing about what other customers are doing here at AWS. And thank you to everybody who's attended and come and given us some time from your day. So thank you all. So title of our presentation today is Cloud Cost Optimization, how the Broadridge SRE team cut AWS costs by 50% to get back in line with the original business case. My name is Leigh Nelson. I'm a Senior Technical Account Manager with Global Financial Services here at AWS. And I'm going to be co-presenting today with Jay Ubriani from Broadridge. Jay, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody from wherever you have joined. I'm Jay Ubriani. I'm Senior Director of Site Reliability Engineering at Broadridge Financial Solutions. I manage a global team of multiple SRE squads across 3 different continents. And this is the presentation about cloud cost optimization from the perspective of a SRE team. Typically, you would have heard from the FNOps team, but we want to present here regarding what were our experiences from the SRE point of view. So thank you, Leigh.
Great. Thank you, Jay. All right. Agenda for today, we'll give you a little background on Broadridge, and the RevPort application is the specific application we're looking at today. Talk about the scope of some of the work we did. We're going to look at the people, processes, and technology that encompass the cost optimization efforts, and close with a summary and a takeaway with our top 10 recommendations we have for trying to find that same sort of success in cost optimization. So we'll get started right with the background. Jay, can you tell us a little more about Broadridge briefly?
Absolutely. Thank you. So Broadridge is a global fintech leader with roughly $6+ billion in the annual revenue. We process $9+ trillion in equity and fixed income trades on a daily basis.
That's trillion with a T, right, Jay?
That's correct.
Okay.
And we process roughly $7+ billion customer communication on the annual basis. So that is about Broadridge. Let's hear about the RevPort. So if we can go to the next slide. So RevPort is an industry-leading enterprise field billing, revenue, and expense management platform. It is used by wealth managers, asset managers, fund administrators, basically all the way across all the financial industry. We have roughly 100+ clients in the North America, EMEA, and Asia Pacific. And my team supports it across all the continents, basically.
Okay. Thank you for that background, Jay. Some notes on the scope of our discussion today and what we're sharing. RevPort is just one of hundreds of current cloud applications in use by Broadridge across several hundred different AWS accounts. Broadridge does purchase AWS services through a reseller, Presidio, who utilizes a program called Prism, which manages all reserved instances and savings plans on behalf of Broadridge. So those will be common savings methods for a lot of other customers. However, they are not applicable in this case, so we won't be talking about RIs or SPs today. Regarding the AWS services in play and the architecture of the RevPort application, that's what we call a traditional 3-tier web application. We'll be looking at utilizing a ALB and EC2 web servers on the front end, serving application server also running on EC2, backend database served up by RDS SQL Server, and connecting to various storage on Elastic Block Storage, Elastic File System, and S3 storage services. So those are some of the AWS services in play for this application. Jay, tell us some more facts about how we got here.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, we host RevPort in the Broadridge private cloud. A few years back, we made this decision to move to the AWS public cloud. The decision was driven basically because of the agility, scalability, and high availability features that AWS offers. So we had some very big customers, and we thought AWS will be the right place to go. And Broadridge is a large organization. We had around 100 teams moving to AWS, but we were among the early adopters of the cloud platform at AWS. And we went with lift and shift cloud migration method from on-prem data center to AWS. So here is where the story begins. So we kind of ended up in a perfect storm. Our applications were big, the data volumes were large, the throughput and processing SLAs were very stringent for this large client, and the system required heavy scalability and throughput demand. So on top of that, we had very aggressive project deadlines. And like AWS, Broadridge is also a very customer-centric organization. So we wanted to meet all the deadlines. And what we tried to do was to solve all the problems that we were facing. We set up multiple production-sized non-prod environments, and various business and engineers started working on them to attack the issue head-on. And where did it landed us? So Leigh, if we can go to the next page.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, I think what we see is some common pitfalls in the lift and shift process, and our focus was, getting the application up and running as soon as possible, getting it working, and ultimately, cost was a secondary thought and needed to be approached later. So tell us a little more.
So as I said, to solve the problems, we set up multiple large size production environment. And because we had the CI/CD pipelines and Terraform and Jenkins and Chef, we were able to stand up the environment pretty quickly. But that agility of the AWS and our environment became a curse in disguise and resulted in a very significant overrun from our original cost model. So from SRE point of view, this cloud cost optimization became an absolute necessity. So this presentation is all about the holistic approach we adopted, encompassing people, process, and technology to course correct and drive the cloud cost down to get back to our original business case.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah, as I mentioned, I think these are going to be some common occurrences in migrating applications from on-premises environments into the cloud. Some of the other challenges we ran through along the way, operationally, reliance on these extremely large app server instances. It says ODCR, which is the on-demand capacity reservations, where actually trying to get access to certain large instance sizes was a challenge in certain availability zones. A lot of folks out there kind of think of the cloud as sort of this infinite compute resource, but ultimately there are physical limitations at times, and we certainly ran into those. And some challenges with the database and throughput to storage, where even once we got to larger and larger sizes beyond anything that would have been running on-prem, it exceeded some of those throughput limits, and we saw challenges in just how long it took to back up databases or run other maintenance operations. So operational excellence was a continued challenge as well. So with the background, let's talk some more about cost optimization. Jay, you put this succinctly from the beginning as soon as we started talking about this, and you said it takes a village. Tell us about that village.
Absolutely. It takes a village. So we started from as we said, we had the comprehensive approach encompassing people, process, and technology. So you want to start from the top. And executive sponsorship is a must in any cloud cost optimization journey. We were very lucky. We got support from our CTO, CFO, our business GM. So that made our initial get going with the project very simple. But it doesn't end there. You have to get the support from the grassroots level also. So we had to engage our developers, our QA folks, our business users. And the way we engage is by giving the visibility to the cost information. That was the key. Once we democratized that details and showed them how much each things are costing, like when you show an engineer how much RDS instance that they are standing up is costing us on a daily basis, or when the business users are trying to solve the problem and standing up the prod size environment in the lower QA or development region. And when we show them what is the daily cost of this environment, their eyes open up and they become more amenable to making changes to that. So this, I would say, is a cliche-filled slide. So basically, you have to engage all the stakeholders and you have to cover all the bases. And one more thing I wanted to add is that engage your financial team also. So what we used to do is share the data related to cost. So we used to do the monthly budgets and publish it to the our financial organization, and as well as we used to track the data on a weekly basis, how much we are sending. And at the end of the month, we used to show the variance where we stand as compared to what was the original budgeted item. So we engage our financial organization also. Other places you want to go, which were very helpful to us, is the Cloud Center of Excellence, as well as your FinOps team. Leverage them to fullest. They have a lot of good ideas. You can borrow from them and implement it, and they will be very happy. And last but not the least, go to your friends at AWS. So Leigh, come on in.
Thank you, Jay. Great summary here. Absolutely. I think the relationship we've had together has been key over the years. Regular weekly meetings, both operationally and looking at cost and working continually to make those optimizations continue. So an ongoing effort, absolutely. The democratization piece is super important. Understanding those end users or those developers are able to see the effects of the changes they make after a deployment right away, quickly, and understand where cost overruns might happen. Making sure your P&L leaders have access to the summary data that they need in a timely manner, all of which very important. So thank you, Jay. Let's look at some numbers and services.
Absolutely. So as I said, democratizing information is very easy. But what we want to do is, this is the process point of view. So we covered the people. And one thing I just want to add in the people is, like, as my mother used to say, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. And having that personal angle with all the stakeholder is very critical. So first thing what we do is, they say in the cloud cost efficiency effort, is the measure, monitor, and improve. So measure your cloud costs, use the tool like Cloud Explorer or Cost Explorer or Cloud Health that we used to use. And these are the slides that are showing. So, and other thing that you want to do is to tag your resources. So this way you can slice and dice it as you want it. So from the cost visibility point of view, we created different charts that we used to share with the different stakeholders. So the first one that you're looking on the left-hand side is by service. So very easily, what you can see here is our top 3 services, basically RDS, S3, and EC2, are taking up 80% plus of our cost. So what we were looking for the pattern. So one pattern I already mentioned, that we had a lot of prod size, non-prod environment. Second pattern was that this one, that our top 3 services are taking our 80% of the cost. So what we did is try to identify those patterns and then deep dive into it and attack it and solve those problems, basically. So here, the next thing that we also did is cost tracking that we mentioned, is show that numbers to your engineers and work with them to cut down this cost. Other thing that I want to drive here is this cloud optimization is not one and done. It is a continuous operation. As you can see on the right-hand side slide, which covers roughly 18 months, is that when we started initially, starting from the June of 2022, in the next 3 months to 4 months, we cut down cost by 20%. What that gives you is, that gives you credibility with the stakeholders as well as the management, that yes, if we make the effort, we can cut down the cost. And then the other thing I want to point out is, this is a continuous operation. You learn, you evolve, and you keep on going. So as you can see, we are still on that journey. We still have more work to do. Leigh,
Thank you,
you
Jay.
want to add anything?
Yeah. I think what just to point out as well, what we're not seeing here as well is the overall, how much data was processed, how much new data was onboarded throughout this. So throughout these times where costs were continuing to reduce, you were continuing to do more with less and onboard some of the largest customers. And so it's even more substantial, than these numbers might indicate as far as what you're able to do. So excellent efforts. Let's take a look. You talked about the lower environments
Absolutely.
and the multiple prod size environments and running. So tell us what you did there.
Okay. So as I said, the two patterns that we already identified, the third pattern that we saw was that our non-prod costs are very high. And here is where it is easier when you are talking to your stakeholders and to convince them that, do you need this large size environment all the time when you're solving the problem? Or can we cut down the size of the environment? Do you need it on nights and weekend when you're not using it? So the way we attack was those are the two things that we did. We went with the right sizing and the evening and the weekend shutdowns, and we will go in deep during the technology section regarding that, how and what we addressed. The other thing that I want to say is engage your team. So what we used to do is we used to gamify the cost efficiency in our sprints within the SRE team. And we used to recognize both finders and implementers. And as we are going through and doing this, celebrate those small successes, and that will keep you on the path of the continuous improvement, basically.
Excellent. Yeah, those lower environments, a lot of folks, the recommendations are there. Okay, we can talk about scheduling, shutting off environments that aren't in use or that are underutilized, and those dev and test environments are an easy win, especially when they tend to represent a lot of the spend sometimes. So that's almost always going to be the first place to look, and we can often find a lot of great savings there. So Jay, I know before we get into the some of the specific technology, you wanted to share a couple of the resources as well.
So two key resources that were really helpful to us during this whole journey. One was the AWS itself and all the wonderful material that they put on, whether it will be in the well-architected framework documentation, or it can be your AWS reInvent YouTube sessions or other things. Other organization that I want to point out is the FinOps Foundation. They have some wonderful material that can be very helpful in your cloud cost optimization journey.
Thank you, Jay. So you are living and breathing AWS costs. I love it. All right. Let's move into the some of the technology in place that we're able to target for these cost optimizations. So starting with right sizing, essentially making sure we've got the appropriate instance sizes, the appropriate resources dedicated and needed to run each environment. So some of those tools within AWS, you're going to see AWS Trusted Advisor, which is going to give you specific recommendations, pointing out exact instances you have, whether it's RDS or EC2 that may be underutilized, that's not being connected to on a regular basis, storage that might be over provisioned, Compute Optimizer to help determine the appropriate instance sizes, and CloudWatch for all of your monitoring and utilization. So making sure you're taking appropriate metrics within each service, looking at CPU and memory, disk I/O to see where those instances might be underutilized, using all tools at your disposal, right? So not just the internal AWS, there's a lot of third-party tools out there as well, Datadog, Splunk, Dynatrace, things like that, and making sure that the appropriate resource, the appropriate instance type is selected. AWS does have instances that are geared towards memory utilization, towards compute, towards I/O intensive applications, and often you can find savings by making sure you're targeting the correct instance type. Also, modern offerings. If you come from a traditional on-prem data center background, you might be used to trying to squeeze out the last life out of some old hardware at AWS. the latest and greatest is often the most cost effective. So taking advantage of the newest instance types for EC2 and RDS, quite often they end up being not only faster, but more cost effective for the amount of work they can do and how quickly they can process your data. Jay, tell us a little more about the RDS instances.
Yeah, so before I go to RDS, right sizing, just want to point out, it has to be data driven and should never impact performance. That's how you build your credibility with the engineers, with the business users, and do the pinpoint analysis and then take the appropriate action. So that is very critical with the right sizing. And with the modern offerings, it is the lowest hanging fruit. You can do it without impacting anything and save the cost and improve the performance along with saving money. So if you are on the M5s, go to M6 or M7. If you are on R5, go to R6, R7, same thing on the storage side. That is an easy win. So as we said, RDS was our biggest cost contributor. So we wanted to leverage the multi-tenancy to consolidate all those instances and then pack it very densely and reduce the cost. And again, as I said, similar to right sizing, when we did the consolidation, we were completely data driven. We did the multi-dimensional analysis. So in RDS, your key dimensions are your CPU, your memory. The other things that are very critical for us that were there were the IOPS, the storage type, and the storage throughput, because our maintenance operations relied upon that. So we wanted to make sure that we are covering all those aspects when we are modeling for the consolidated environment and addressing those. So that way, when we put the consolidated environment, it can handle the throughput. It can perform at the same speed as the individual environments were. And this way you can reduce the cost. For this, we heavily leverage the Datadog and the CloudWatch. It has all the matrices, and that will help you build the model, and you can consolidate and save the cost.
Excellent. Great advice there, Jay. Okay, let's look some more about compute.
Okay, so as we said that RDS and EC2s were among the top three. So what other things that we did to cut down the cost? So one was to shut down the EC2 and the RDS in the after hours in the non-prod environment, especially. That was another easy win. Other thing I want to point out here is leverage tagging and leverage automation and tooling to address this. This way you can reduce the toil and handle this very easily. So that was one of the key recommendations regarding shutting down environments during the off hours. The other things that the next thing regarding was that fewer and smaller non-prod environments with purge and cleans data. When you are doing analysis in the lower environment, you don't need all the horsepower, you don't need all the data. Come up with a smaller environment which is more cost effective but can produce the same results that you're trying to do. Other thing that we learned along our way was keep cost in the mind when you are architecting. So when we had to build a preprocessor in front of our 3-tier application, we kept that in mind and we developed it with the serverless architecture with lambdas and step functions and DynamoDB and those kind of things where you only pay when you are using that resources. So you don't have to do all these things that we did for the other compute resources. And last but not the least, delete the idle and non-utilized resources. So you can very easily find out what are the DB2 RDSs where there are no requests going in, load balancers, EC2s, which are not being used. And our thing to our users were very simple that if you are not using it, why we need it? And we were very easily able to convince them and remove those resources. And this is a continuous occurrence again, because people will find a way to leave the resource and make it a automated effort. So this way, this has been taken care of along the line all the time.
Great, and that's a perfect segue talking about the storage and the life cycles. We see this a lot that traditionally when you're used to storage on premises and in your own data center, You've already bought the storage up front. It doesn't matter if you fill it up or not. It's the same, generally the same cost to you. But in the cloud, when you're paying per gigabyte, all of a sudden things start to matter like that. And we found a lot of easy cost savings at Broadridge just by looking for old data that it was just hanging around, that didn't have any lifecycle policy, anything assigned to it. That was old backups, snapshots, things like that that had been kept with no regard to the ongoing costs. So, Jay, tell us a little more.
Absolutely. So we addressed the compute with the RDS and EC2. The other thing was the storage. So there are three storages, S3, EFS, and storage that was there with the RDS. So let's see what we did. So another low-hanging fruit, intelligent tiering offered by AWS, both for S3 and EFS. When you don't know the workload, this is the very easy switch that you can flip and save the money by moving your storage to the lower cost environments, basically. Same thing, if you know the pattern, like once we knew the pattern regarding our backup and what is the retention policy, we came up with the S3 lifecycle policy and moved it to the Glacier. So this way, they are not incurring the cost of the standard S3. So those two things are very critical and very easy to handle. Other thing, strongly recommend, come up with a compress and archive policy for your files, and for your backup, as Leigh mentioned, have a good retention policy based upon the environment, and that will serve you well. And the key thing in this S3 analysis was the S3 storage lens. Wonderful tool. It is very easy to use and pinpoint you very good opportunity where you can have the savings. Other thing, similar to compute, the modern offerings are good. As I said, the leverage other teams, and we got the recommendation from our FinOps and CCOE team regarding going to GP3. So this GP3 is a wonderful storage type that basically AWS had. It is 4 times, it has 4 times more throughput. GP2 has 6,000 IOPS limit. GP3 can easily give you 16,000 IOPS limit. So we had the whole project or a complete phase where we migrated all our EBS volumes on the EC2 from GP2 to GP3, no questions asked. In the RDS, we did the concentrated effort, all non-prod RDS instances. Wherever we had GP2, we took them to GP3. We saved the cost, we got better throughput. IO ones, which are faster, which can go up to 64K, but where we had the opportunity where GP3 can perform based upon the load and resource requirement, we converted even IO1 to GP3. And that resulted in considerable amount of savings. So this was, again, leveraging people's effort and then implementing it. It helped us tremendously. Other thing, same as I said, we learn and we evolve. Leigh recently brought to our attention, there is a new storage type IO2, which is 4 times more throughput compared to IO1. So we are migrating to it, and this will cut down our both the backup time and our maintenance time, our biggest RDS sizes. So that is the modern offering, which is available to you. Just leverage it. Second one, right size. So right size, I want to bring up 2 things here. So in the RDS, what limitation it has is once you extend the storage, there is no option to shrink it. So what we came up with the mechanism was that over the weekend, if we created a big, say during the week, we created a database which was 5 terabyte, we worked on it, solved the problem, we dropped it. Now we cannot reduce the storage. So what we did is we came up with the pipeline with the Terraform, Jenkins, and Chef, which will back up all the databases, create the new RDS instance, and just load the database that are needed with the small size storage. So use those kind of automation. Other thing I want to point out in the EFS, these are the small nuggets I want to share based upon my experience, is the EFS, there is a parameter called provision throughput. Pay very close attention to it. It costs you money, but based upon the CloudWatch matrix, you can see what is the right number and you can right size it and reduce the cost. And same thing, similar to EC2, If we have unutilized EBS volumes or all snapshots, remove them. If it is not needed, we don't have to pay for them.
Excellent. Thank you, Jay. Review of some of the tools in place and available to everyone at AWS right in your console all right now. And these are things that can help for both the monitoring, the right sizing. Cost Explorer, third-party tools to see those costs as they change. Utilize that tagging to, as Jay said, slice and dice the data. Make sure you can see it per client, per environment, and give the appropriate information to the internal teams that need to see it. For right sizing, Compute Optimizer, Trusted Advisor. Again, lots of excellent recommendations, not just for cost optimization, but also for security and operational excellence as well. And Jay, I know you can't say enough good things about Storage Lens for getting insight into your S3 buckets. And then finally, avoiding surprises. Cost anomaly detection uses machine learning to detect any unexpected spend within your environments and send alerts as necessary. We've found this very useful for cases where new environments were stood up or changes were deployed that led to unexpected cost overruns. And then finally, AWS budgets, tracking spending over a longer period of time, understanding how you're trending toward your weekly, monthly, or quarterly budgets, and the ability to automatically take action in certain scenarios. So with AWS budgets, you can actually say, hey, if my lower environment or my dev environment hits a month's worth of spending, in a day, shut it off, stop it. And, in the lower environment, we can go back and find out, what exactly happened where we don't want to wait for days and days of cost overruns to sometimes build up if they weren't actioned on. So that's the automation, some pieces available. As we've both been saying today, a continuing effort. And I see we're just closing in on time and we have one or two more slides for you. So ongoing effort, not just the optimization of the existing environment, but true modernization, making sure this is a more cloud native application. So migrating all those expensive RDS SQL Server instances with their licensing costs to AWS Aurora using a tool called Babelfish, which can help translate the SQL queries. So for a limited number of changes required to the application. Using more AI-based tools for visibility, lots of great new features exposed in CloudWatch, which Broadridge was able to help define some of those paths in being part of beta programs that we made available through enterprise support. And Jay?
Sure. So continuing on the same line, data archiving on the OLTP data sources to move it to the data warehouses. So as we said in the RDS, multiple dimensions are interconnected. So if we data archive and just keep few quarters worth of data, it will reduce the timing needed for the maintenance. And this way you can reduce the throughput and IO requirement that can lead you to reduce the size of the instances. So they are all interconnected. That's what we are going to do there. Same thing on the EC2. Right now we use one of the biggest AWS EC2 instance, which is vertically scalable architecture. Currently, we are going to switch it to the horizontally scalable app tier that can help us in cutting down the cost. And same thing on the Redshift, rather than being on the normal Redshift, we are planning to move to the serverless. So this way we only pay when we are using it.
Excellent. Thank you, Jay. All right, to wrap up, we're going to give you our top 10 levers for cloud cost optimization. Just the things we hope you can take away with you today. So modern offerings are good. Use those new instance sizes, those new storage technologies. Leverage all the AWS tools and people available to you. We always say within enterprise support, the voice of the customer matters. I've been wonderful working with Jay on a regular basis and sharing all the new features and services we have available. Enterprise support is here for you and able to continue helping you optimize all your workloads at AWS. Jay.
Sure. So same thing as we're saying, lifecycle policies on S3 and well-defined purging and backup policy, that will help you tremendously. Intelligent tiering on S3 and EFS. Easy switch to flip, save the money. And the crown goes to the right sizing, right sizing, right sizing. Just to give you the idea, we said we saved 50% over the last 18 months. Right sizing was roughly 20%. Modern offering contributed to roughly 5%. The lifecycle and intelligent tiering on S3 gave us roughly 10% of the saving. Scheduling night and weekend gave us roughly 9% of the saving, and shutting down idle and unused resources gave us 6%. So that will give you some rough idea how we were able to save 50% from the original budget to bring back to our original cost model. One other thing to share in this, leverage the automation and AI wherever possible for this cloud cost efficiency initiative, because reducing toil is like a key principle of the SRE. So we always look for any and all automation opportunities.
Thank you, Jay. As you always say, do more with less. And to close out the final two, sponsorship from executives across all aspects of business, get the people involved, democratize that information. And then finally, continue that forecasting and tracking. Make sure this is an ongoing effort. Cost optimization doesn't end. Ideally, it's going to be from the beginning in rolling out your applications, but there are many levers you can pull after the fact if necessary. So thank you all so much for your time. Thank you, Jay. And that wraps up our presentation for today.